The Geneva Convention of 1864, which sprang from the founding of the Red Cross, was the world's first attempt to relieve the suffering of the war's wounded. In 1906, special protection was added for those who treat the wounded. But if you ask one of the Navy's hospital corpsmen who have been giving battlefield treatment for over 100 years, they're not sure what you mean by special protection.
Heroism doesn't wait for cameras and headlines. Too many times the greatest heroes perform their feats unseen and unsung. We honor now the forgotten, the overshadowed, the overlooked greatness of the unsung heroes. United States Marine or sailor has been badly wounded on America's battlefield, his chances of getting to a doctor in time to save his life have been close to nothing. But his chances of staying alive have been superb because of the bloody sacrifices of America's most consistently unsung heroes, the Navy hospital corpsmen. They are not doctors. Their training is measured in weeks instead of years. But it has been their job to be at the center of battle, lightly armed and carrying no more medical supplies than can be dragged in a shoulder bag.
Corpsmen lost their lives protecting their patients, throwing themselves on their patients to protect them from enemy fire, and as a result taking the fire themselves.
It's like their doctor, their physician, their preacher or whatever. And these boys treated me with such a way that you wouldn't dare say anything to Doc, else somebody else would knock your head off.
September 11, 1942, the submarine USS Sea Dragon was deep in enemy waters on its fourth combat patrol when Seaman First Class Darrell Rector entered his third day of belly pain, nausea, and rising fever. With no physician aboard, the diagnosis fell to the Sea Dragon's hospital corpsman, pharmacist's mate First Class Wheeler B. Lipes. He became certain that he was looking at a case of severe appendicitis.
The skipper said, well, what will be the outcome if we don't get this man to a hospital and he's not operated upon? And Lipes said, well, he'll probably die. The skipper said, well, if you operated, could you save him? And he said, well, it's a shot. It's a long shot. I'm not saying I could be successful at it, but I certainly can give it a try. And so he took members of the boat's crew, set up the wardroom as an operating room, and with very primitive instruments.
We took ordinary tablespoons and bent the handles over the table to make retractors. As the retractors were being held, I should have found the appendix there at the end of the cecum, and nothing happened. No appendix. So I slipped my fingers under the gut and turned it, and the appendix was buried at the distal tip, and 2/3 of that 5 inches was black.
The appendix Lipes removed had turned gangrenous. He had not been an instant too soon. Using torpedo alcohol as one of his makeshift medicines, he closed the incision and prayed for the best.
This is the captain speaking. Just want to let you all know that Seaman Rector's doing fine. He'll be back on his feet in no time.
100 years ago, you took a young sailor, you gave him a few weeks of training, you gave him what he could carry in a small medical bag, and what he had in here, and he went out and saved the lives of sailors and Marines who were wounded in combat. Today, 100 years later, you take a young sailor, you give him what he can carry in a small bag, what he has in here, and he goes out and saves lives. The chain is unbroken.
One in the hand, one through the left knee, one through the facial area from right to left, one through the groin area, and realized at that point that my head was kind of like mush. Vision was severely affected. My hearing was gone at that point. Then came the choice of what do? You're still in the line of fire. They're still shooting at you. You don't really care a whole lot. It's not likely that I was going to live anyway. So I grabbed those weapons and ammunition and took off to the right side of the hill where the other men were down.
We have an emergency situation.
The terribly wounded Ingram served both his weapon and his wounded Marines, killing the enemy and saving his comrades. Ordered to withdraw when on the brink of unconsciousness, he refused to be evacuated, declaring himself walking wounded. He stayed to outlast the enemy and survive the war. Many of his hospital corpsman colleagues did not. Peacekeeping operation in Beirut, Lebanon in 1983 literally exploded in tragedy and thrust the hospital corpsmen into a numbing and familiar role. 2 months of ground combat culminated in a suicide bomber driving an explosives-laden truck into the Marine headquarters building. The mammoth blast killed 241 Americans and injured scores.
When the attack on the building was made, almost all the Navy medical personnel inside were killed. There were only 3 hospital corpsmen who survived. Our doctor, Dr. Hudson, and 15 hospital corpsmen were killed in the incident.
You couldn't tell a corpsman from a Marine. They were identical. The only thing is, the corpsman was carrying a little bit more gear, his medical gear.
For their battlefield heroism, Navy corpsmen have had 14 ships named in their honor. Today, some corpsmen are petitioning the Navy to name a ship in honor of John Doc Bradley. It was Bradley who not only was awarded the Navy Cross for his bravery, but also was one of the 6 who helped raise the American flag at Iwo Jima. The campaign to honor Bradley began after his son wrote the best-selling book, Flags of Our Fathers.